of a ship, I think of pirates, not ghosts. But apparently there's a very real thing called ghost ships. Now, a ghost ship is a vessel with no living crew aboard, and let me tell you, there have been a lot of these ghost ships found, so let's take a look at them. Starting off, we have the SS Nemesis. The SS Nemesis had been on a voyage to deliver coal from Newcastle to Melbourne, Australia, when it became lost at sea in 1904. In the weeks following the storm that had caused the ship to go off course, bodies of those on board and fragments of the ship's wreckage washed ashore at Cronulla Beach, about 18 miles south of Sydney. Unfortunately, the massive vessel was never found, and its final resting place remained a mystery for many years. But that all changed in 2022 thanks to Subsea Professional Marine Services. The remote sensing company was searching the ocean floor for lost cargo when they accidentally stumbled across the missing ship. The wreck was found largely untouched, with significant damage and deterioration at both the bow and stern, as it was discovered around 16 miles offshore under nearly 525 feet of water. CSIRO, Australia's national science agency, was then tasked with gathering further data on the wreck. CSIRO voyage manager Jason Fazey also said, "Our voyage track took us right past the wreck, and we were extremely lucky with the conditions for the survey, with our team on board doing a superb job in capturing incredible imagery of the wreck. We surveyed the entire length of the wreck with our drop camera, revealing a lot of detail of the ship's structures, including some of the internal spaces." Now, it's so crazy to me that over 100 years later, they found the ship. Next up is Ghost Ship Jenny. Now, this ghost ship may be one of the most disturbing of all. The story, which is unsubstantiated, comes from an anonymous account of a whaling ship called Hope. As the story goes, in 1840, the Hope came across the Jenny, a schooner completely frozen in ice in the Antarctic Drake Passage. The crew of the ghost ship Jenny was still on board, but froze to death. The captain was frozen at his desk, where an open log's last entry read, May 4th, 1823, no food for 71 days, I am the only one left alive. Well, Jenny left its home port of the Isle of Wight and made a successful journey all the way to the port of Callao, Peru. With one half of their journey completed, the crew of the Jenny would have to sail their vessel through the treacherous waters of the Drake Passage once again. Now, unfortunately, Jenny's return trip would end in the Drake Passage. On to the Mary Celeste. On November 7th, 1872, a captain, his wife, his daughter, and 7 crewmen set out from New York to Italy. A month later, they should have arrived, but the British ship Di Grazia caught sight of the boat drifting in the Atlantic. The crew went on to the Mary Celeste to help anyone on board, but found it completely empty. 6 months worth of food and the crew's belongings were still there, but its lifeboat was gone. The ship's floor was covered in 3 feet of water, but that was far from flooded or beyond repair. Now, the crew's belongings and the ship's cargo were discovered intact, but the lifeboat was missing, and as were all the 10 people who were recorded on board. They found personal items scattered in the cabins, but most of the ship's papers were missing, along with the captain's navigational instruments. Galley equipment was neatly stowed away, and there was no obvious signs of fire or violence. The evidence indicated an orderly departure from the ship by means of the missing lifeboat. Now, the last entry in the ship's log was written over a week before it was found, but it shed little light on why the Mary Celeste never completed its journey. Now, commenters generally agree that some extraordinary and alarming circumstance must have arisen to cause the entire crew to abandon a sound and seaworthy ship with ample provisions. Now, the 10 crew members were never found, and whatever they experienced on board remains a mystery. Now we have the MV Alta. In October 2018, the MV Alta was on a voyage from Greece to Haiti. Now, such a trip is unusual for a ship of this type and size, which typically stays closer to the shorelines. Now, unfortunately, the ship's engines failed in the Atlantic Ocean, leaving the crew stranded. The United States Coast Guard rescued the crew about 1,400 miles southeast of Bermuda, and the ship was abandoned. Now, after the abandonment, no one really knows where the ship traveled. An unverified unverified report suggested that the ship was towed to Guyana and possibly hijacked, only to be abandoned a second time. Now, regardless of what happened, the ghost ship was next sighted by HMS Protector in August or September 2019 near Bermuda. It's still sitting on the Irish coast now, but by 2022, the hull of Alta had split in two following a series of storms, but otherwise it's been untouched. Now let's talk about the Jian Seng. In 2006, the Australian Coast Watch found a ship floating in the sea. It had a broken tow rope, so being lost while dragged around the water could explain why it was empty. But that was about all investigators could go on. The name Jian Seng was printed on the side, but there was nothing else to identify the ship. Investigators found no records of distress signals, no identifying documents or belongings, and no reports of a missing boat. Now, a large quantity of rice was found on board, leading the boarding party to believe the vessel had probably been used as a resupply ship for fishing boats with food and fuel in the waters outside the Australian Exclusive Economic Zone, and which had broken tow and drifted to its current position. Now, they couldn't even figure out who it belonged to or where it even came from. Now we have Sam Rataulangi PB 1600. A cargo ship found floating in the Indian Ocean in 2018 was cut loose from a salvage boat in a storm, investigators in Myanmar say. The ship, which has been identified as the Sam Rataulangi PB 1600, was initially discovered by fishermen on August 27, 2018, prompting Myanmar's navy to launch an investigation. Myanmar officials said the rusty cargo ship was in rough but working order, although there were no traces of a crew on board. Now, the ship was built in 2001 and was last recorded near Taiwan in 2009, according to the ship tracking site Marine Traffic. Now, the ship was registered in Indonesia and has been considered decommissioned or lost for nearly a decade. The cargo ship is owned by an individual in Malaysia, but it's unclear why it was abandoned or what it was doing floating out in the ocean for almost a decade. Then there's High Aim number 6. About High Aim number 6 left Taiwan on Halloween in 2002, but it didn't reach its destination. This Taiwanese ship was found drifting in Australian waters by the Australian Navy without its crew in 2003, though plenty of fuel and provisions remained on board, along with the crew's personal belongings and a hold full of stinky seafood. A forensic examination could find no sign of a struggle, and a search of 7,300 miles turned up no clues, but 10 days after the ship was discovered, calls were still being made from Indonesia on the cell phone of the ship's missing engineer. Now, the only crew member ever tracked down claimed that the crew had worked with pirates to end the life of the ship's captain and main engineer. The crew member gave no details as to how the bodies were disposed of, where the deaths took place, and how the crew managed to make it back safely to Indonesia. The High Aim 6 sat abandoned on the beach at Broome for 18 months and was then broken up and buried in a landfill. Moving on to Manfred, Fritz, Bajorat. On February 26, 2016, a group of fishermen off the coast of the Philippine island suspiciously drifting at sea. Now, the yacht was visibly battered and clearly on its last legs. When the fishermen boarded the seemingly abandoned yacht, they weren't prepared for the sight they would find: the mummified body of a German soldier. Manfred Fritz Bajorat has been sailing around the world for about 20 years. He'd last been seen in 2009, although a friend said he heard from him on Facebook in 2015. Naval said the items inside the yacht were scattered and Manfred's wallet was not found, but the yacht's radio, GPS, and other valuable items were still there. Now, there was no evidence of foul play, so a year would seem like enough for the warm, salty air to mummify the body, until an autopsy revealed that he'd probably only been dead for about a week. Now, among the material found on the yacht was a letter from him to his former wife, Claudia, who died in 2010. Now, according to the Mirror, the note read, 30 years we've been together on the same path, then the power of demons was stronger than the will to live. You're gone, may your soul find its peace, your Manfred. Up next is the SS Baychimo. Built in the early 1920s, this is one of the real-life ghost ships, which was in 1931 trapped in pack ice near Alaska, leaving no hopes for the owner, Hudson Bay Company, but to abandon it. However, it remained adrift for the next 38 years and was frequently sighted floating aimlessly in the waters off Alaska. Now, weather conditions had always made it impossible to salvage, but in 1969, a group of Inupiat people on the northern shores of Alaska Alaska between Icy Cape and Point Barrow spotted the rusting hulk caught in the ice. Now there was no visible name, but there was only one ship it could be, 38 years after its crew abandoned it as a lost cause. Now that, however, was its last sighting. A few expedition programs have since been launched to track this mysterious ghost ship, but they haven't found it on the ocean floor nor anywhere else. The ship simply just went poof. And lastly, we have the MV Joyita. A couple of decades after being built as a private yacht, MV Joyita was being used as a cargo vessel. In 1955, it took its final voyage from Samo to the Toklio Islands to grab cargo off Kopra. Now the trip was supposed to take just 2 days, but 5 weeks later, Joyita was located 600 miles off course by a merchant ship in the South Pacific. Now the boat was in good shape, but the captain, 16 crew, and 9 passengers, which included a doctor and a government official, had vanished. The cargo and lifeboats, along with navigation equipment, the logbook, and firearms were also missing. Now the radio was jammed on a distressed frequency, but transmitting a signal so weak it could barely cover a mile. Now more intriguingly, a doctor's bag was discovered open on the desk containing medical equipment and bloody bandages. There were lots of other mysterious things too. The flying bridge was damaged, the deckhouse windows were broken, and because the electric clocks had stopped at 10:25, the switches for the cabin and navigation lights were on. Whatever had occurred had done so at night, a fact corroborated by the remaining fuel in the tanks. It's plausible that in the night the Joyita began taking in water, a violent argument broke out, possibly involving firearms between the captain, keen to press onwards and claim his cargo, and his first mate insisting they turn around. Now whatever happened though, it remains a mystery. Well, that's all for our list of the top 10 mysterious ghost ships recently discovered after decades. Now which ship on our list interests you the most? Let us know in the comments down below, and don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel. I'm your host Emily, and we'll see you next time. Peace.